Hello and welcome to the Be Your Own podcast. I'm your host, Samana Duran, and founder of Be Your Own, the global media hub of all things entrepreneurship and career navigation. As you know, this podcast is all about highlighting incredible women out there doing awesome things. Welcome back to the Be Your Own podcast. We are now on season 2 and we have a fantastic lineup of trailblazing women joining us for this season. Our first guest joining us today is Moving Ahead founder and CEO Liz Dimmock. Liz Dimmock has been working in the fields of consultancy, coaching and mentoring for the last 16 years in business ranging from 30 employees to 330,000. Having held both commercial, coaching and leadership roles at IMG, KPMG and HSBC, in 2012, Liz cycled the entire route of Tour de France 1 week ahead of the men's race, matching them stage for stage. This journey highlighted the inequalities in the sport she loves, the fact that there is no women in the Tour de France despite the clear physiological ability of women to complete it, a driving factor in the creation of Moving Ahead. Moving Ahead currently represents the opportunity to make a difference in a space that needs change and an opportunity to draw on Liz's passions, subject matter expertise and experience. It also represents a fantastic opportunity to bring together this exciting team who are global experts in their respective fields. Please welcome our first guest, Liz Dimmock. I'd love to talk to you about your journey with Moving Ahead and how you're working hard to improve workplace inclusion and diversity as an organisation.
Great to be here. Thank you for inviting me.
I truly admire the work that you're doing, so thank you once again.
Oh, thank you. It's been a journey starting out. We actually started out with a pure focus on gender diversity with Women Ahead, and then it quite quickly pivoted within the first year to Moving Ahead, ultimately because the intersectionality of women, diverse women, we are all more than just gender, and actually to create change, to create true inclusion, we need to work more inclusively. So that's been a really exciting part of the journey. And I would say that there's no one silver bullet to advancing workplace inclusion. It's a tapestry of interventions that often is needed. It's a tapestry of often the challenges that might be there in different organisations. And I love that because it's an ever-evolving space. There's always research. We love being part of research around that. So that space is always evolving. But I'd say that one of our biggest things that we do to improve workplace inclusion is mentoring, structured mentoring and cross-company mentoring. Super excited today because this week we launched the 8th year of the 30% Club cross-company mentoring. So that's a campaign to advance the pipeline and parity of women into leadership and board roles. And we very proudly deliver the mentoring for that. And so I'm a real believer, I'm a passionate believer in the power of mentoring to create change, two people learning from each other, expanding your diversity of thought by working with someone who you wouldn't normally meet. So yeah, this week we've got 130 organisations and over 3,000 people all ready to embark on their 9-month mentoring journey. And that's all about how do we advance diverse women and diverse talent to really accelerate their careers. So I'm really excited about that.
So how have you been handling this whole pandemic? Because you've got some special news to share, haven't you?
Yeah, good question. Interestingly, so as the first lockdown hit, I just become a mum, and I had my son in February, one day before my 42nd birthday, a really special time in my life. But interestingly, and I'm a real believer that, be grateful for the positives, really consider that. So for me, that meant a few things. So yes, there was an enormous hands to the deck, ensuring the team protected, supported the organisation, and actually ensuring that we are ensuring that there isn't a disproportionate effect of COVID on women and minorities. So in terms of our work and our mentoring, really important to keep the pace on that. But actually, it meant that my sort of time as a new mum was actually very hands back into the deck with the organisation. And I think, when you found your own organisation and it is your love and your passion and it is still your other baby, and you don't leave one baby and, just go and give attention to the other one. So for me, interestingly, COVID as a new mum, as a CEO, meant that I could digitally keep going, and so I would be working, being mum, really embrace shared parenting. So we did quite random working hours and patterns, but it worked and we made it work. And don't know if I should say this, but even practical things like breastfeeding and pumping could keep doing that, and I'd be on Zoom meetings, but actually I could be pumping whilst I was doing that. So really practically meant that I could even keep breastfeeding longer than I thought that I might. And actually it's been a really interesting time and has kept me close, connected to clients, to campaigns, to the team, whilst being a new mum.
In contrast, it would be interesting to see how male CEOs combine work-life balance and fatherhood as a first-time parent.
It's been really interesting, and I would say as a female founder, even when going for investment, and actually the way people at that time would look at me at that point, early mid-30s, and actually and I have been directly asked, what are your plans about a family? And that would not happen to a man seeking investment. And, we've recently collaborated with McKinsey and JP Morgan to research into female entrepreneurialism, and looking, this was, off the back of the Rose Review, and really important work for us to understand what are the blockages, how do we advance female entrepreneurialism, and so much of that research has massively resonated with me. But I think for me, COVID has really shaken up the rule book. It's really enabling us as entrepreneurs, as leaders, as managers, as colleagues, how we can create different patterns and really look at how we can parent in really different ways. And so that's really, really positive. I was always thinking, I knew I always wanted to be a mum, and always been really ambitious in my career, whether I was in corporate, when I was going alone, and knew that and hoped that at some point that would be part of my life. But also you're thinking, how can I afford it? When is a good time to do it? When you're setting up a business, when, how? And so, but again, we are women, we make it work, you find a way. And that is, and I think COVID has presented actually some really interesting opportunities, but I appreciate not for everybody in their working structures, but for me personally, it's definitely been a personal highlight in terms of working digitally.
So back to leadership, how are you keeping your team motivated right now?
Before lockdown, we've always worked, really proud to say, actually quite agile and flex. So we have an office space west of London, and we have that, but we've also kind of got satellite bases in kind of London through our partner organisation, Rico. So we've always been quite dispersed and used to working agile and flex. The majority of the team actually are working mums, so we've kind of totally embraced that. I'd say, and that I think put us in good stead for COVID. So, but I would say I've been really proud in how the team have embraced that, and we're all on Teams. There's a really good chat sort of channels, and there's virtual coffees, and there's the team, when we were allowed, some of them would be in the office as well. But I would say that now it's about momentum and pace. So there's a different challenge now, that this is a much longer term. I think when it was summer, people were embracing the positives of the weather and being able to kind of be at home and not be commuting, for example, if they were. But now this is a longer term kind of mental challenge. So it's how do we make sure that we are genuinely including and connecting and keeping that momentum. And I do think, I do worry about the team and how we keep pace, how we truly keep connected. The more extroverted colleagues, some of them have been saying they're finding it really hard. They found this year really draining. So it's really looking at how we create different ways of interaction, because some people love the Zoom and the Teams and some people are really struggling with that. So it's, and before going into lockdown, there's a piece around inclusion of if some people are in the office and some people are at home, some are shielding, some aren't. So it's just, as a colleague, how we are really mindful of that.
How would you say you're manoeuvring around balancing that new role as a mother and work? Do you have mentorship? Do you have guidance, or have you got coaches either personally or professionally?
Okay, so personally, as a leader, I'm not a good role model for work-life blend and balance. So I am, I would say this has been a very singular focus for me, and I remember at the beginning, I worked a bit with Susie Wolf. She was one of the first Formula One drivers, amazing woman. And she would talk about, not having a plan B, that you put all your energy in a plan A and that creates success. And I guess subconsciously, that's really what I've been doing now for a number of years. But that isn't great to keep doing that. So that continual pace. And so actually during COVID, one of the things I have done, I always have mentoring. I'm a real believer in having that always for ourselves, but I've had some coaching, and one of the bits is always the pace of a day, particularly even more now. It's another Zoom or another Teams call and 10, 12 plus meetings a day. It's too much cognitively and in every respect. So one of the things that I focused on with the coach is what are the micro actions. Sometimes we all think we want to make massive changes and suddenly become this ultra zen balanced person, but it's small incremental steps. And so for me, it sounds really basic, but I've taken really small incremental steps of every day I completely stop for 30 minutes for lunch. I make something. That's a privilege of not being in and out of London or traveling. So make something good, have that to eat and have that time. And again, just by doing a little step rather than going, I'm going to work this much kind of less, or it's been a little step that's actually had a big impact. Then the second little micro step was make sure to do 1 or 2 walking meetings a day. So get my headphones on, get the baby in the buggy and do some, and that's made me feel much better. So I think there's a bit around for me personally, little micro actions and using this time to do different things, whether that is preparing a lunch and taking that time to be calm. As an organisation, we have pivoted, but I would say it's the evolution of just how can we be the best we can be? So we've always done digital and virtual events. We run over kind of 300 events a year kind of globally. But what COVID has done is that we've now looking at how can those be the best they possibly can. So over the last few weeks, we've been producing and getting ready for live and pre-recorded event for the 30% Club event. So that's been a really interesting way of how can we make a 2-hour event really dynamic, really engaging. How do we film? How do we record? How do we do the filming in a socially distant way? All of this stuff we've adapted, and I think it's more about can just continually improved. And I also think that from a global lens, mentoring and the things that we can do can all happen remotely. We as colleagues, as leaders, we all need to be taking time out to consider our actions, our behaviours and how we can become the best we can be. And mentoring is really important. So that can be done digitally. But I found that a lot of the campaigns that are global, we're going to be launching a cross-company programme in Latin America in the beginning of next year. We're launching in America next month. So again, it's how we are using this to bring together global communities, which we wouldn't have done so easily before. It would have been colleagues globally or from the UK being on an aeroplane flying around. So that's really exciting to take the work further and digital.
Now, you launched back in 2014 as Women Ahead. and have since managed to leverage the platform to form strong collaborations with the likes of Google, London Stock Exchange and Cisco through Women Ahead. Can you tell us a little bit more about the collaborations?
We within the first few months we had both brands, so it depended on what program actually, and then really over the last year we've completely only now have Moving Ahead, even if it's a women's development program. So these partners would always know us as Women Ahead and Moving Ahead, and now obviously, and it just feels absolutely right that Moving Ahead, it really embodies who we are and what we're trying to do.
What factors do you take in when looking at new partners to onboard? And what would make some more desirable to work with than others?
Well, so I'd say, factors to take into account when looking to form partnerships. In truth, a lot will be created through campaigns. So when we are launching programs, that often it is in response to organisations coming to us wanting to advance their inclusion and diversity. So for example, in response to Black Lives Matter, a lot of our partners and organisations have come to us saying, how can we create a meaningful response and education to our workforce around Black Lives Matter? And so for me, I feel very lucky that we naturally are working with partners who have shared value and motivations around these areas. And in terms of most favoured partnership, I probably reframe that to say around favourite collaboration. So we're all about collaboration and the stronger together, and how do we all create these collective communities shared in the same goals. But the 30% Club, I would say, for me, encompasses lots of very special things. So I think at the outset, it was the vision of Dame, or now Baroness Helena Morrissey, around how do we get more women into those, at that point, FTSE kind of board tables. And one way in which they wanted to do that was through mentoring. How do we empower women? How can we do that? And she came to me, believed in me, believed in Women Ahead, and wanted us to run that mentoring. So for me, it's very special because that was a leader possibly seeing more than you see in yourself, in me, and really giving me that opportunity to say, yes, we can deliver world-class kind of mentoring for this. So that was really special. And as a campaign, it's incredible. It's global. It's looking at how we're creating change at scale, the building that pipeline, but also how we're bringing in leaders and advocates, men as agents of change. And it's now, as I said earlier, we've had the privilege of working with, this year it will be 130 different organisations, and it's been now a community of over 12,000 individuals that we work with. So I love that it's change, it's impact at scale, and it's working with leaders. And now the global chair Anne Cairns is phenomenal in her vision. So she has extended that beyond gender to ensuring representation of boards, of ethnic minority representation. And so the evolution of that is fantastic. I'm really proud to be part of that.
That did lead me on to ask what measurables you've got in place to be able to see what's worked and what hasn't.
Actually, I'm going to interrupt there because I smiled when you said that. So yes, there's that growth, and organisations have stayed on that programme year on year because they're seeing change. And organisations like Pearson, 6 out of 10 of their women that were on it gained role advancement or promotion. Super great and cool. But what we don't do is sit still and go, okay, but we need to learn more. So actually, we've just done a lockdown recruit of an incredibly talented man he's an insight and data specialist. So he's going to now work with us to get even better data. So we measure all our programs, but how do we get better measures? And we're all about the stories. So yes, we measure programmatically key measures, but also what are the stories? So when you talk to these amazing women who have, been courageous and bold and brave, and they've advanced their careers and development, we want to bring forward those stories. So the insight and data is really important, and it's something that is important in whatever we do. We have to show impact. So that's definitely an improvement area and something we're doing this year.
But what would you say for the brands and organisations out there that are simply just using trends and movements as a catalyst to fuel growth and improve their bottom line?
Yeah, so I think again, even as I was saying around that, there isn't that one silver bullet around this, and it is very complex. And again, in different geographies and areas, there'll be different challenges and things that need to be considered and addressed. But I think there's, for us, it's a piece of, there's a multitude of areas from policy and regulation, but at a very sort of simple level, it's how do we inspire, encourage, motivate leaders, CEOs, boards to genuinely learn and learn about their own privilege, their own intersectionality, and that of others. And so it's not about, yes, we believe, we all have to kind of go a bit deep and really look at our own privilege and perspective and help and work with our colleagues to do the same. And within that, there'll be vulnerability and actually often shame and around our privilege and things that we perhaps have done or ways that we perhaps think or behave that we then realise is inherently biased. And so there's a big journey ahead in all of this, but I'm a real believer in where there are organisations that are doing really great work, and there are many organisations where there's a genuine commitment, curiosity to go with this, to develop themselves, to develop their organisational culture and awareness and education around this. How do we help show that to other organisations who perhaps are nervous, sitting on the fence, perhaps compliant, and how do we help them see that and encourage them? And we were talking about the rising tide lifts all boats. So how do we do that? How can we make sure that others are drawn to that positively? But there is so much to be done, and that's the whole pace. And for me, how do you create pace and peace as a founder CEO in a social impact organisation when it's limitless, the amount that needs to be done.
And so looking ahead, what can we see happening for moving ahead in 2021?
Yeah, so looking ahead, I think there's a big piece around, arms around the team and the moving ahead family, around how we stay well, we stay resilient, and that we're all okay, and that we are being the best we can be. There's a big piece there, and we're all learning that. So I don't have a rule book there, and I'd say I think more challenges are ahead there. As you've talked about, we're all responding in different ways. There's a bit around the keep doing, the continue. It's kind of what's working well. Keep building those great collaborations. We'll keep developing our structured mentoring programs, our inclusive leadership development. So again, in response to organisations wanting to genuinely develop leaders, insights and awareness and actions. So there'll be a lot more around that. And global. So there's as I mentioned, much more work digitally, globally. And I think there isn't the going back to the way we were. So it's around looking at how that happens, expanding the team. So really excited. We've done quite a lot of recruitment during lockdown, and we'll hopefully continue to do that. And again, it's bringing in colleagues with the mindsets, but also for us, the diversity of perspective, of background, of thought that we bring into the organisation. And we actually are a very predominantly women-led team, and that is something that, ironically, as many organisations on the flip side, is something we probably need to change, or we do need to change up as we look ahead.
As much as I love having an all-female-led team, I probably also should look at being a little bit more inclusive. I think the truth is we don't always get it right, but at least we try.
It's so interesting because obviously this is all about diversity of thought, and so whilst there are a lot of advantages, and it is fantastic to be working with, and ultimately what you want is a diversity of experience, a diversity of perspective, and you will have, I'm sure, that within your current team. But to extend it even further, it's how do we, But I very honestly, it has been a challenge attracting men to apply, be part of the organisation, because it at the moment is quite intimidating, and we've really grown as a team. And so I think that, and we know on the flip side as women what that is like going into a predominantly male organisation. So we have to ensure that we are being inclusive, but we are also checking ourselves, and that we are we don't have blind spots, and that we are changing that up. So Yeah, interesting challenge.
Thank you so much for joining us on the Be Your Own podcast, Liz. It's been unbelievably amazing having you as the first guest on our season 2.
Yeah, I mean, well, first of all, super, impressed in all of what you're doing. Really important work, and thank you for inviting me to be part of it.
And for anyone who's looking to join your team or collaborate with you, how's the best way to reach out?
We're always open to get in touch with the team. I can leave contact details with you, so that people can get in touch if they want to look at how they can be part of the programs, or looking to join the team, for example. So I'd say that would be the best thing.
Thank you so much for listening. Please let us know what you think of the show. Don't forget you can find us on both Instagram and Twitter at BeYourOwnUK. Our email address is beyourown@beyourown.org, so make use of it and drop us an email with anything that you want to know. If you fancy reading pretty much all of the career navigation stuff we talk about here on the podcast, then head over to beyourown.org for exclusive content, interviews, tools and resources. And lastly, if you love the show, subscribe to us wherever you get your podcast, either on Stitcher, iTunes or Spotify. And that's it from me. See you next time.